A very good morning to all of you. I welcome you all to Ansarkari, and I hope that you all must be doing fine. So let's start with today's analysis, which is going to be for 7th of March 2023. So we'll be looking into rescue in the Nandyal villagers. They bring the tiger cubs to safety, and then there is grave threat to political stability. This is basically Shiv Sena case in Maharashtra. It raises constitutional questions. So we'll be looking at what type of constitutional questions are being raised by them. Apart from that, let's start with today's analysis. So BJP picks Manik Saha again in Tripura as the chief minister, and swearing in is going to be from tomorrow. So he meets the governor to stake his claim to form a new government after being elected leader of the BJP legislature party unanimously. Party puts to rest the speculation that Pratima Bhaumik would be chosen to lead the government in the state. So that is the update from Northeast India. Apart from that, Northeast is very, very important, even from the perspective of examination. Prime Minister must look into the opposition's concerns on misuse of central agencies. So we even had a look at what the opposition parties are saying. We had a look at their letter yesterday. So the Nationalist Congress Party chief Sharad Pawar Monday urged the Prime Minister Modi to take seriously the concerns expressed by the opposition leaders over the alleged misuse of the central agency. So majorly two agencies, central agencies are being named. So here we need to be clear with their structure, where their origin. So basically it includes the Central Bureau of Investigation, that is CBI, and ED, that is Enforcement Directorate. So you need to find out more about them. And apart from that, why a strong opposition, or why opposition is very important in democracy, why it is important for maintaining a healthy and sustainable and a strong democracy. So you need to be clear with that. You need to have your own viewpoint regarding the same. So man arrested in Bihar for sharing fake videos as officials they meet the migrant workers in Tamil Nadu. So we have also looked into this issue, that how the migrant population, they are fearful who are working in Tamil Nadu state. They feared that they might be exploited. That was mainly driven by a fake video, and that's how we can say that social media can have its positives and its negatives. So 2022 winter air in NCR region was cleanest in 5 years, but still it is toxic as per the CSE report. So there was heavy and extended rainfall in the early phases of the season that prevented smog episodes. And however, Delhi continues to remain the most polluted city in NCR region. So from this article, what is important for us is from the perspective of science. Firstly, we need to be like clear about smog, how it is formulated, what are the conditions under which a smog is formed. And apart from that, you need to find out more about the Center for Science and Environment. So keep these things in mind while you play Holi. So play it responsibly. So Tamil Nadu taking steps to ensure the safety of migrant workers as per their labor minister. So the district administrations of Coimbatore, Tirur, Erode and Nilgiris, which have a significant population of the migrant laborers, they have instructed to ensure their safety. And apart from this, a committee has also been formed, which would be basically communicating with these migrant laborers in Hindi language, so that they are like all their concerns are properly taken into account and they are ensured 100% safety in the factories in which they are working in the state of Tamil Nadu. People rescue 4 tiger cubs in Andhra Pradesh. So the residents of the Peda Gumdapuram village in Andhra Pradesh, they have rescued four tiger cubs from dogs which were attacking them on Monday, and it was basically on the fringes of the Nallamalla forest. So this is an important thing, that Nallamalla forest, it is there in the state of Andhra Pradesh, and that's how people they can also play an important role, because we always talk about the man animal conflict, but at the same time their relationship, or like like definitely humans have a very important role when it comes to the conservation and protection of wildlife. So Indian Air Force chopper is going to help contain smoke from the Kochi dump yard. Yesterday we had a look at this, and we also discussed about some of the long-term solutions from the perspective of how to tackle this problem of dump yards. So while the fire was completely doused, smoke it still continues to rise from the garbage heaps. And how like Indian Air Force choppers are going to help contain the situation is that they will be deployed on Tuesday for aerial spraying of water to bring the situation at Brahmapuram solid waste treatment plant under control after the plastic garbage heaps they spread across acres of land, it caught fire. So that's how the helicopters are going to control the situation for a short-term perspective, we can say. So Foxconn is going to set a manufacturing facility in Telangana, and that's how we are seeing different foreign investors in terms of FDI are coming in different states. So here for us, we need to be knowing about that maximum FDI, or most often FDI is focused in which all states. So because of this, there is obviously there is regional inequality in terms of development, be it social development, economic development of different states. So talking about the anti-defection law, so it is facing convulsions. So first thing, which obviously everybody might be knowing, is that anti-defection law is being talked about in the 10th schedule of our constitution, and it was brought in 1985. So here also the introduction of this article is talking about the same thing, that Parliament enacted the anti-defection law that is there in the 10th schedule in 1985 to curb the political defections, and the volume, intensity, recklessness, and uncontrolled villainy seen in the defections in the 1960s and thereafter almost came to a stop after this amendment. And defections not only caused the frequent fall of the governments, but it also caused great instability in the political parties, with power-seeking politicians wreaking havoc on the political parties. And Supreme Court of India, in its first comprehensive judgment in the Kyoto Holohallan case, characterized it as a political evil. So, and basically, defections were categorized or characterized by the Supreme Court as political evil, and upheld the right of the parliament to curb this evil through legislative mechanisms. So, this Supreme Court judgment is really very important. You need to remember that this case of Kyoto Holohan is related to which thing? So it is related to anti-defection, and years have passed, and this promise of political stability seems to be ending with the anti-defection law facing convulsions in Indian legislators, especially in the last 5 years. And the happenings in the state of Maharashtra are an example of this thing. So talking about its sound objectives, but before like dealing with the questions of constitutional importance that have arisen in the Maharashtra Assembly, which are presently before the Supreme Court as well, so the case is subjudized, it is necessary to make a few general points about the scheme of anti-defection law in India. So firstly, we'll be generalizing, taking up some general points related to it. And in fact, a closer reading of this law will show that this enactment had a two-point objective. So the first one was obviously to curb the act of defection by disqualifying the defecting members. Second was to protect the political parties from debilitating instability. So these were the two main objectives. So you obviously these two objectives needs to be on your tip if somebody asks you that why or what was the objective of bringing anti-defection law in India. So these are the two reasons. And the fact that frequent defections from even well-organized political parties leaves them weak. So that is the case. And obviously, Indian democracy is essentially based on a party system where stable parties are a sine qua non of a stable democracy. So obviously, if we want a stable democracy, अगर हमें stable democracy चाहिए, तो it is very important कि at the same time हमारी political parties में जो उनकी internal democracy है, that is also stable. जो functioning है political parties की, that needs to be stable. So representatives elected otherwise than as members of the parties cannot run a government, which is a very complex institution that demands unity of purpose. You need to have ideological clarity and cohesiveness in the political parties. And apart from that, that this objective is the principal focus of the anti-defection law is clear from two provisions enacted in the 10th schedule, namely the provision of a split in a political party and that of a merger of two political parties. So you need to be knowing about the condition. Let's see if it is mentioned in this article. So although split has ceased to be a defense against disqualification with the deletion of the paragraph 3 of the schedule, and a closer look at this erstwhile provision is necessary for a proper understanding of the true objective behind this law. So under this paragraph, if a split occurs in a political party resulting in a faction coming into existence and 1/3 of the legislators, they move out of that party and they join that particular faction. So those members could get an exemption from disqualification. So this was one condition which was mentioned in the 10th schedule. Basically, ये एक exception था जिसमें ये बोल रहे हैं कि अगर पॉलिटिकल पार्टी में स्प्लिट होती है एंड 1/3 ऑफ द लेजिस्लेटर्स दे मूव आउट ऑफ दैट पॉलिटिकल पार्टी एंड वो न्यू फैक्शन को ज्वाइन करते हैं, सो जो वो 1/3 लेजिस्लेटर्स मूव करते हैं वो डिस्क्वालीफाइड नहीं किए जा सकते. And the point to note here is that 1/3 of the legislators would get protection only if there was a split in the original political party. So this is very important. आपको जो भी इसमें एक single word लिखा हुआ है ये with clarity ये आपके mind में छपा होना चाहिए कि split only in the original political party. So the split in the original political party is the precondition for exempting 1/3 of the legislators from disqualification. All right, so this is one exception which is mentioned under the 10th schedule. And in other words, we can say if there was no split in the original political party and 1/3 of the legislators, they have moved out, all of them would be liable to be disqualified. Obviously, agar original political party mein split nahi ho raha hai, but still 1/3 of the legislators, they are moving out and they are joining some other faction, still unke khilaf बेसिकली उनको डिस्क्वालीफाई किया जा सकता है बिकॉज ओरिजिनल पॉलिटिकल पार्टी में स्प्लिट नहीं हो रही है. सो ये अगेन ओरिजिनल पॉलिटिकल पार्टी आपके दिमाग में रहना चाहिए. एंड विद द डिलीशन ऑफ दिस पैराग्राफ, सो ये पैराग्राफ हाउएवर डिलीट कर दिया गया था बाद में. सो अ स्प्लिट इन द ओरिजिनल पार्टी इज नो लॉन्गर अ डिफेंस अगेंस्ट डिस्क्वालिफिकेशन. सो ये ओरिजिनल पॉलिटिकल पार्टी की जो स्प्लिट की बात हो रही थी, इस चीज को, इस पैराग्राफ को डिलीट कर दिया गया है. एंड इवन व्हेन अ पॉलिटिकल पार्टी नाउ, अगर कोई भी किसी भी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी में, चाहे वो ओरिजिनल हो या अर्लियर वो पहले स्प्लिट हो गई हो, अगर उसमें भी स्प्लिट हो रहा है एंड लेजिस्लेटर्स they will not get any protection. So that would be the impact of the deletion of the paragraph 3. But the point is that in order for the legislators to claim protection, a split in the original party was always necessary. So ये चीज थी एंड आई होप आपको क्लैरिटी होगी कि हम किस चीज के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं, क्या चीज डिलीट होगी एंड अब क्या सिचुएशन है. एंड अब आते हुए मर्जर इशू पे कि अगर पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज में मर्जर हो जाता है तो तब क्या सिचुएशन होती है, तब क्या कॉन्सिक्वेंसेज रहते हैं. So in paragraph 4 which protects defecting the members from disqualification, so now we are talking about paragraph 4. अभी हम बात कर रहे थे paragraph 3 की. So the conditions is the condition is merger of the original political party with another party and 2/3 of the legislators agreeing to such a merger. So this is the condition which paragraph 4 is talking about कि firstly original political party honi chahiye merger mein, and apart from that 2/3 of the legislators they should agree to such a merger. Only in that case they would be protected from disqualification. So here too, as in split, जैसे हमने split की बात करी अभी ऊपर, merger of the political party is the precondition to seek exemption from disqualification. So again यहाँ पे merger में भी original political party की बात हो रही है. So one thing that becomes clear from an analysis of the omitted paragraph on split and the paragraph on merger is that legislators do not have the freedom to bring about a split or mergers as they are legally retained by the anti-defection law. So it is the original political party in both of these cases, चाहे वो split हो, चाहे वो merger हो political parties का, जिसके पास हम बोल सकते हैं या जिस सिचुएशन में ओरिजिनल पॉलिटिकल पार्टी के पास डिसीजन लेने की पावर है. So the argument that the speaker cannot make a roving inquiry into the split or merger is specious as the speaker takes the decision only after ascertaining the fact of the split. So the power lies with the Speaker of the House, and the same applies to the merger also. So only a merger of the original political party provides the basis for claiming protection from disqualification under paragraph 4. Of course, it contains another assertion also, namely the merger will be deemed to have occurred only if 2/3 of the legislators agree to such merger. So merger के केस में 2/3 of the legislators का agree होना is very important when we are talking about merger of political parties, and साथ ही साथ original political party भी एक faction होना चाहिए in merger. So only in that case disqualification नहीं किया जा सकता है. So this simply means that for exempting defecting legislators from disqualification, merger is taken into account only if 2/3 of the legislators have agreed to it. So this I have explained you. And a merger of the parties can take place outside the legislature, but it has no consequence unless 2/3 of the members agree to it. So merger outside of the legislature भी हो सकता है, but at the same time यहाँ पे जो condition important है, that is 2/3 of the members should be the count. Now coming to Maharashtra case and talking about its crux. So in Maharashtra case, interesting constitutional questions have arisen. So both interesting constitutional questions have arisen here, and the first question that should have been decided by the court was on whose whip is valid. Kiski whip valid hai? This is the first constitutional question. The whole issue could have been settled on that point itself, but it is true that the breakaway group of the members of the Legislative Assembly chose its own whip, who also reportedly issued whips to all the MLAs of the Shiv Sena. So, एक ही question है apart from that. But the question as to whose whip is valid should have been decided on the basis of the explanation to paragraph 2, which says that an elected member of a house shall be deemed to belong to the political party by which he was set up as a candidate for election as such member. So this is very important to understand कि जब हम whip की बात करते हैं and suppose a legislator has defected, so उस political party की जिसमें वो पहले member था, क्या whip valid है या नहीं? क्योंकि अब जो ये पैराग्राफ बात कर रहा है वो ये बोल रहा है कि ओनली उसी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी की whip उस पर्टिकुलर लेजिस्लेटर पे एप्लीकेबल होगी जिसके थ्रू वो इलेक्ट होके मेंबर ऑफ हाउस बना है. So this is the thing, and this explanation makes it unambiguously very clear that the party which can legally issue the whip is Shiv Sena, led by Uddhav Thackeray, as this is the party which set them up as the candidates. Basically, इस political party के through ही वो MLAs बन के elect होके members बने हैं of the state assembly. So उसी political party की whip उनके ऊपर valid होगी अगर उन्होंने basically they are trying to defect to some other political faction. So it should not be forgotten that the anti-defection law was enacted to punish the defectors and not to facilitate defection. And the Supreme Court, by allowing the Election Commission of India to go ahead and decide the petition under paragraph 15 of the Symbols Order, has put the cart before the horse. So basically, 10th schedule is a constitutional law, and the disqualification proceedings under it should have been given primacy over the proceedings under paragraph 15 of the Symbols Order, which is a subordinate legislation. So साथ ही साथ obviously यहाँ पे एक और issue emerge हुआ था regarding कि शिवसेना का जो नेम है एंड जो सिंबल है पॉलिटिकल पार्टी का, वो कौन से दो फैक्शंस को अलॉट किया जाएगा, या कौन सा उनमें से उस नेम को एंड सिंबल को यूज कर सकता है. सो ये सेकेंडरी इशू था. हाउएवर मेन इशू यही था, डिफेक्शन वाला. And as it happened, so Election Commission of India basically gave a flawed order, which has made the operation of 10 schedule irrelevant and complicated. So the propositions made in this article, so जो भी अभी तक हमने समझा, they can be summed up. So let's summing up. Let's understand what is the bottom line of this whole article. So legislators, they have no freedom under the 10th schedule to split or bring about a merger of their party with another. So पहली important चीज या पहली important outcome of this article and our understanding is that कि जो legislators हैं of a political party, power उनके पास नहीं है. They do not have the freedom under the 10th schedule, चाहे split की बात करें या merger की बात करें. So power उनके पास नहीं है. So only original political party जो है उसके पास पावर एंड फ्रीडम है स्प्लिट की एंड मर्जर की. एंड साथ ही साथ हम नंबर्स की ऑलरेडी बात कर चुके हैं. स्प्लिट में 1/3 में नंबर होना चाहिए, 1/3 ऑफ द लेजिस्लेटर्स, एंड अगर ऑब्वियसली उनको प्रोटेक्शन चाहिए फ्रॉम disqualification. And secondly, merger में 2/3 of the legislators is the number. So you need to remember this number. And a whip can be legally issued only if the original political party would set them up as candidate in the election. So हमने whip की भी बात करी. So only original political party जिसके थ्रू वो MLA elect होके state assembly का एक member बने थे, उसी political party की whip उनके ऊपर applicable होगी. And the court could have settled it as the first and the foremost issue, which would have done complete justice to the original political party Shiv Sena led by Mr. Thackeray, as in the mandate of Article 142 of the Constitution. So end करते करते अब आपको फाइंड आउट ये भी करना है कि आर्टिकल 142 ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन क्या बोल रहा है. व्हाट डज इट से? So this was a very important article, very beautifully written, and जो भी intricacies थी, we have understood it well. So let's move forward. So coming to India-Germany relationship. So it is no secret that India's relationship with Germany has traditionally lagged behind its relations with its other European partners such as France. So this is one comparison कि जो other European countries है, अगर हम उनसे India की relationship compare करें and India Germany की relationship compare करें, तो traditionally we are lagging behind when it comes to India Germany relationship. So benign mutual neglect coupled with Germany's primary focus on China are some of the factors, but it appears to be changing rapidly now. So अब ये factors, अब situation obviously globally change होती हुई दिखाई दे रही है. So things are also changing between India and Germany. So their Chancellor Scholz 2-day visit to India that began on 25th Feb significantly coincided with the first anniversary of Russia's war on Ukraine. So recently, German Chancellor, he was on India visit, and उसी टाइम पीरियड में रशिया यूक्रेन वॉर की फर्स्ट ईयर एनिवर्सरी भी थी. सो basically Mr. Scholz in his own words said that it was a Zenwende, this is a German word, or it basically means it was a turning point. So indeed, Russia invasion has been a watershed moment in Germany's security policy, resulting in the abandonment of decades of post-war pacifism towards strategic matters. So this has been a watershed moment in Germany's security policy because of Russia-Ukraine war. So obviously their perspective, their relationship with China is changing. So this is evident in Germany's pledge to boost the defense spending to 2% of the GDP and provide special funding to bolster the country's military. So जब हम बात कर रहे हैं कि Germany's की security policy, Germany की security policy के लिए it was a watershed moment, तो it is evident from the fact कि Germany ने decision लिया है to boost the defense spending to 2% of the GDP, and they are going to provide special funding to bolster their military. So Russia's war and China's assertiveness posturing have brought into question Germany's approach of, again, change through trade. prompting a deep rethink of its energy and trade dependencies towards diversifying the economic relations. So it is very important when we are talking about foreign relations. It becomes a very risky kind of a situation because you never know how things can change. You need to diversify your relationship, you need to diversify your partners. अगर आप किसी एक country या किसी partner के ऊपर dependent हो, so obviously उसकी वजह से risk is always very high. Suppose if we are dependent upon China, and China can, like, at any point of time it can take any decision जिसकी वजह से supply of any particular thing can be impacted, and वो उस economy के लिए बहुत ही नेगेटिव एंड रिस्की सिचुएशन हो सकती है, बिकॉज शॉर्ट टर्म बेसिस पे आप अगेन किसी और कंट्री के ऊपर डिपेंड नहीं कर सकते हो. तो इट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू मेंटेन डाइवर्सिफाइड रिलेशंस विद डिफरेंट पार्टनर्स. So, as ties with Russia and China, they entered uncharted waters. Europe's increasing prioritization of the values-based partnerships with like-minded countries can advance India-German cooperation. So these are the keywords, please remember them. And in this context, the German government's coalition agreement in 2021 refers to relations with India among its top foreign policy priorities. So India is on priority for Germany, and Mr. Scholz's visit has built on German foreign minister's visit to India in December 2022 and the sixth India-Germany intergovernmental consultations and a biannual format of engagement that commenced in 2011 to expand cooperation in defense, in trade, in clean energy, in migration, in digital transformation, and the Indo-Pacific region. So जब भी हम किसी भी कंट्री के साथ रिलेशनशिप की बात कर रहे हैं तो आपने ये चीज जरूर नोटिस की होगी कि इंडो पैसिफिक हमेशा मेंशन किया जाता है, चाहे वो यूरोपियन कंट्रीज हो एंड ऑब्वियसली पैसिफिक कंट्रीज के साथ. तो दिस रीजन इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. सो हिज विजिट अज्यूम्स greater importance as India holds the G20 presidency this year, and we seek to avoid geopolitics hampering cooperation in the forum. So discussions on Russia-Ukraine conflict and its global repercussions were the center stage as the war continues. So this was again a hot topic of debate between the two countries. And in a departure from Germany's previous Asia policy that centered around China, so अभी तक हमें ये देखा आ रहा था कि एशिया की, अगर हम एशिया पॉलिसी की बात करें ऑफ जर्मनी, सो उसमें चाइना वाज द सेंटर. नाउ वी आर सीइंग कि ये चीज ऑब्वियसली चेंज हो रही है, स्पेसिफिकली बिकॉज ऑफ द रशिया यूक्रेन वॉर. एंड apart from that, Mr. Scholz first visited Japan after assuming office in 2021 and later invited Mr. Modi for the sixth intergovernmental consultations to Berlin. So this enhanced the political outreach to Asia is part of Germany's overall strategy for the Indo-Pacific region, which mentions India as the key partner. So for Germany, the stability of the supply chains and trade routes linking Asia to Europe assumes now critical importance given its status as Europe's economic powerhouse and its reliance on exports. So basically, Germany, it also relies on exports. So उसकी वजह से सप्लाई चेन्स एंड ट्रेड रूट्स जो एशिया एंड यूरोप को लिंक करते हैं उनकी इम्पोर्टेंस जर्मनी के लिए ऑब्वियसली दैट इज वेरी क्रिटिकल एंड इट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट बिकॉज जर्मनीज इकोनॉमी इज डिपेंडेंट अपॉन एक्सपोर्ट्स एंड उसको यूरोप का इकोनॉमिक पावर हाउस भी बोला जाता है. सो ये दो फैक्टर्स, stability of supply chains and trade routes linking Asia to Europe, they are very important for Germany. And apart from that, talking about the defense links, so New Delhi attempts to diversify from its military dependence on China, and Berlin reassesses its long-standing arms exports policy. So Germany could become an important defense partner for India. So हमें पता है Russia has always been an all-weather friend of India, and जहाँ तक कि military dependence या defense dependence की अगर हम बात करें, या basically जब भी हम arms and ammunitions की बात करते हैं तो majorly India Russia के ऊपर dependent है. So India is also now trying to diversify its relationship. तो इंडिया के लिए नेक्स्ट बेस्ट ऑल्टरनेटिव की अगर हम बात करें, सो दैट इज जर्मनी. एंड we can strengthen our relationship in the defense sector also. So the meetings, it included discussions around co-development of military hardware and technology transfers, and a deal worth of $5.2 billion, where Germany would jointly build 6 conventional submarines in India that could be now like underway. And besides this, the first ever France India Germany military exercise drill is slated to take place in 2024 towards enhanced security and defense collaboration. So the three partners are India, Germany, and France. However, the name of the exercise is not mentioned, but that would be taking place for the very first time in 2024. And yet, it is important for the two countries, that is India and Germany, to set realistic expectations in the security realm. So, again, a very important statement. Having realistic expectations in the security realm is very important. To stay pragmatic is very important. Despite their common concerns regarding stability in the Indo-Pacific, so कुछ common concerns की अगर हम बात करें of India and Germany, so first of them is it is important to maintain stability in the Indo-Pacific region, जहाँ पे we are seeing that China is being to be assertive, specifically in South China Sea, and then Germany does not share a border with China, obviously, but India has territorial conflicts with the country. So that is another concern. And despite the lack of German trust in China, Mr. Scholz' visit there in November 2022 demonstrated how intertwined German industry is with the Chinese markets. But even while Mr. Scholz emphasizes the difficulties in decoupling from China, it is encouraging that Germany is drafting a new official China strategy amidst a wider national security strategy. So it is important. Obviously, it is not so easy कि अगर आप China के ऊपर dependent हो तो एकदम से you will reduce your dependence, because China is very important अगर हम globally trade की बात करें. So that is there, but it is very important you take the first step towards a change, and that's what Germany is doing. So India and Germany, they also cooperate in multilateral forums as part of the G4 grouping, pushing for United Nations Security Council reforms as well, which is obviously important for India, and as evident in Germany's invitation to Mr. Modi to attend the last year's G7 summit. Talking about trade and technology, when it comes to India-Germany relationship. So Germany is India's largest economic partner in the European Union as well. So thus, trade naturally figured high on the agenda. It boosted by the pre-launch of India-European Union Free Trade Agreement negotiations, where the Chancellor, traveling with his high-powered business delegation, stated he would get personally involved in the negotiations and try कि obviously European Union में there are 27 countries, so India and European Union, they are basically negotiating a free trade agreement. So German Chancellor said that he would get personally involved and ensure कि it takes place as soon as possible, because it is important कि 27 countries, they needs to be on the same page. And apart from that, collaboration in clean energy and green technologies, that has emerged as the central pillar in the partnership, with the launch of Green and Sustainable Development Partnership last year, and cooperation in the area of green hydrogen. So the subject of mobility and migration was also under focus, given Germany's shortages of the skilled manpower. So Germany is facing shortage of skilled manpower. So obviously Indian youth can play an important role, or the Indian diaspora in Germany becomes very important. So where technically skilled Indians, they could help plug this gap for Germany. So while economics comprises the bulk of the partnership, it is refreshing to witness the relations steadily they evolve into a more wholesome partnership. So we are seeing the India-Germany relationship is developing and it is evolving into a more wholesome partnership. Apart from that, divergent positions on the war have not undermined India's regular political engagements with Europe and convergence in areas such as Indo-Pacific that are cementing the strategic dimension of the partnership. So obviously, हर एक country का different role है, different take है and the perspective है on the Russia-Ukraine war. And जैसे कि अगर हम इंडिया की बात करें, so India's stand on Russia-Ukraine war is different from what is the stand of Europe. So डिस्पाइट दैट वी आर सीइंग कि जो इंडिया की रेगुलर पॉलिटिकल एंगेजमेंट्स है विद यूरोपियन कंट्रीज उन पे कोई ऐसा मेजर इम्पैक्ट नहीं हुआ है. सो एज एन इंटेंसिफिकेशन ऑफ द रशिया चाइना एक्सिस कुड फर्दर एम्बोल्डन दिस अलाइनमेंट. सो अगर आने वाले टाइम में वी सी कि रशिया एंड चाइना बहुत स्ट्रांगली दे आर बेसिकली इमर्जिंग टुगेदर, तो इंडिया एंड जर्मनी रिलेशनशिप एट द सेम टाइम अपनी रिलेशनशिप को एम्बोल्डन कर सकते हैं. And apart from that, closing down this article, we see against the backdrop of the volatile geopolitical shifts, emerging multipolarity, and Europe's enhanced courtship of India. India's ties with Germany could be vital in shaping the new global order. So, very important keywords being used here. So, these can be used in the mains answer. So post-pandemic, कैसे Indian economy has recovered? Let's understand that. So reasons for recovery. So the charts, they are based on the data source from the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, Reserve Bank of India, and US Federal Reserve ka data. We are trying to analyze, and that's how it is being depicted in the form of graph. So the chart one, it is talking about how the private final consumption expenditure, that is the red line, how it is performed. So when we try to understand it, so हम ये तो नहीं बोल सकते कि it has been increasing steadily, but yes, it is fluctuating, and right now it is, we can say, it is falling. So you can see that earlier it was increasing, it was at the same level, after that it shot up very high, uske baad, but it is been declining. You can see the height of the bars, it is falling. Coming to the government final consumption expenditure, which is, you can see in this light color, light brownish color. So it is at very lower level, we can say. So not much when it comes to the government's final consumption expenditure. But anyways, in this union budget, government has focused upon capital expenditure. So let's see how that is going to perform and what are going to be the results of it. Coming to the gross fixed capital formation. So gross fixed capital formation, simple bhasha mein, we are talking about investment. So dark blue color, you can see earlier increase हो रहा था and एकदम से it shot up massively. उसके बाद it declined, then it again rose, and उसके बाद again it is declining. So investment, it is falling. So that is one of the concerns. But at the same time, अगर हम domestic consumption demand की बात करें, so that is one of the strongest factors जिसकी वजह से we can say कि Indian economic growth is being driven. एंड नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स भी देख लेते हैं, विच इज इन लाइट ब्लू कलर. सो नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स ऑब्वियसली पहले नेगेटिव टेरिटरी में थे, एक क्वार्टर, बेसिकली 2 क्वार्टर के लिए दे वर इन नेगेटिव टेरिटरी. बेसिकली नेगेटिव मीन्स इम्पोर्ट हम ज्यादा कर रहे थे एंड एक्सपोर्ट वी वर डूइंग वेरी लेस. सो इम्पोर्ट्स एंड एक्सपोर्ट का अगर कंपैरिजन करें तो इम्पोर्ट्स वर मोर देन एक्सपोर्ट, सो इसलिए नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स नेगेटिव हो जाते हैं. सो नेगेटिव अगेन काफी क्वार्टर्स में इट वाज नेगेटिव, एंड उसके बाद तो इट बेसिकली increased. So net exports भी negative में ही चल रहे हैं. So that is not a good thing for us. Apart from that, रेपो रेट और फेड रेट की परफॉर्मेंस देखें. सो फेड रेट इज यूएसए का जो सेंट्रल बैंक है, फेडरल रिजर्व, उनका जो रेपो रेट कैसे परफॉर्म किया है या कैसे किस तरीके से इंक्रीज किया गया है, क्या फैशन रहा है, एंड इंडिया में रेपो रेट. So basically, we see कि if the US Federal Reserve increases the interest rates to target inflation, so RBI has to follow suit irrespective of whether it impacts inflation in India or not. So basically, ये चार्ट ये दिखाना चाहती है या ये बोलना चाहती है कि जब भी US फेड रेट इंक्रीज हुआ है, इंडिया में भी रेपो रेट को इंक्रीज किया गया है, इररिस्पेक्टिव ऑफ द फैक्ट कि वो इन्फ्लेशन को कम करने में हेल्प करे या ना करे. बट हम बेसिकली जो यूएस का सेंट्रल बैंक कर रहा है वही इंडिया का सेंट्रल बैंक, दैट इज आरबीआई, इट डिड. दिस इज व्हाट दिस ग्राफ इज ट्राइंग टू से. सो आप देख सकते हो जब भी फेड रेट इंक्रीज हुआ, रेपो रेट भी इंक्रीज हुआ है. तो multilateral reforms as a priority in the G20. So, why should multilateralism be given importance in today's global order? That is one of the most important questions because we are emphasizing upon multilateral reforms. So, why? Question is why multilateral reforms are important. Then, how can the G20 help in multilateral reforms? What role can G20 play in these reforms? Then, can multiple minilateral groupings become an alternative mode of multilateral cooperation or not? जो मल्टीपल बेसिकली मिनीलेटरल ग्रुपिंग्स हैं उनका क्या रोल रहेगा, G20 का क्या रोल रहेगा, and why these multilateral reforms are important, and why would global powers be averse to the idea of reform in the multilateral institutions. So क्या challenges रहने वाले हैं in bringing these multilateral reforms. So let's start with the analysis for this article. So while assuming the G20 presidency in December 2020, that is India, it stated that its agenda would be inclusive, ambitious, action-oriented, and decisive. So some of the keywords which you can use कि India का G20 agenda क्या है, majorly क्या India का G20 agenda है. So in short, you can say it includes inclusiveness, ambitious, action oriented रहने वाला है, and it should be decisive. So New Delhi also said that its primary objectives are to build global consensus over critical development and security issues and deliver the global goods. So this is also there, and this resulted in placing multilateral reforms as one of the top presidential priorities for India. And accordingly, G20 Idea Bank, that is Think 20, also placed multilateral reforms as one of its priorities. And the T20 Task Force on Towards Reformed Multilateralism aims to construct a roadmap for multilateralism 2.0. So I would say कि ये article बहुत important होने वाला है. So please pay your attention while we are analyzing it. So सबसे पहले understand करना ये important है कि why is multilateralism important. So multilateral cooperation today is confronting multiple crises. So क्या crisis है when we are talking about multilateral cooperation? First is due to persistent deadlocks, multilateralism has lost the majority's trust. This is the first challenge. Second is multilateralism is facing a utility crisis where the powerful member states, they think it is no longer useful for them. This is the second thing. And moreover, increasing great power tensions, deglobalization, populist nationalism, the pandemic and climate emergencies, they added to the hardships. This is the third thing. So this impasse led states to seek other arenas, which includes bilateral, plurilateral, and minilateral groupings, which subsequently contributed to further polarization of the global politics. So that's how that is what the trend we are seeing when we are talking about multilateral cooperation. However, cooperation and multilateral reform is the need of the hour. So most of the challenges nations face today are global in nature and they require global solutions. So obviously जब challenges global होंगे तो solution भी global होना चाहिए. So pressing global issues such as conflicts. So अगर कोई आपसे पूछे कि what are the global issues? So आपको वो पता होना चाहिए obviously if you're reading the newspapers. So first one is different conflicts. So जो different parts of world में हमें देखने को मिल रही है. So it is not just the Russia-Ukraine war. When we are talking about Syria and Turkey, then situation in Yemen. So ये सब चीज़ों के बारे में clarity होना is important. So first global conflict is the conflicts, global issues is conflicts. Then we have climate change जिसके बारे में हम obviously बहुत बात करते हैं. Then third is migration. Fourth is macroeconomic instability. Fifth is cyber security. So all these are the pressing global issues. Apart from that, furthermore, disruptions such as COVID-19 pandemic की वजह से जो भी disruptions देखने को मिली वो reverse हो चुकी हैं. They have reversed the social and the economic progress that the global society made in the past couple of decades. So obviously ये हमने trend देखा ही है. जो भी हमने अभी तक basically economic progress करी थी, जो social developments हुई थी, COVID-19 की वजह से सारी reverse हो गई हैं. सारी हम बोल सकते हैं सब zero हो चुका है. So why reform is difficult? अब ये समझते हैं why multilateral reforms that is becoming difficult. So reforming multilateralism is a difficult task for various reasons. First reason is multilateralism is deeply entrenched in the global power politics. So global power politics से multilateralism is related, and उसको reform करना obviously खुद में एक बहुत बड़ा task challenge है. And as a result, any action in reforming multilateral institutions and frameworks automatically transforms into a move that seeks changes in the current distribution of power. So obviously, जिन countries के पास अभी बहुत ज़्यादा पावर कॉन्सेंट्रेशन है, जो बहुत ज़्यादा पावरफुल है ग्लोबल लेवल पे, एंड हम बात कर रहे हैं मल्टीलेटरल रिफॉर्म्स की. सो अगर मल्टीलेटरल रिफॉर्म्स किए भी जाते हैं, सो ऑब्वियसली उसकी वजह से जो करंट डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ पावर है वो भी इम्पैक्ट होगा, एंड ऑब्वियसली वो कंट्रीज क्यों अपनी पावर को कम करना चाहेंगी. सो ये है सबसे पहला चैलेंज व्हेन वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट मल्टीलेटरल रिफॉर्म्स. Apart from that, second challenge is the status quo powers. They see multilateral reforms as a zero-sum game. And for instance, in the context of the Bretton Woods system, the US. So Bretton Woods system basically World Bank and IMF and WTO भी हम ले सकते हैं. So Bretton Woods system, the US and Europe, they believed reform would reduce their influence and dominance. So ये एक एग्जाम्पल है, केस स्टडी बोल सकते हैं, व्हेन वी आर सेइंग कि सेकंड चैलेंज इज दैट जो अभी करंट मेजर पावर्स है, स्टेटस को पावर्स हैं, दे फील दैट मल्टीलेटरल रिफॉर्म्स दे आर जीरो सम गेम. So that is the thing, and this makes decisions about reform in these institutions by consensus or voting very hard. So it is very difficult कि आप reforms लेके आओ through consensus or voting. Third challenge is the multilateralism appears at odds with the realities of the emerging multiplex global order. So the emerging order seems more multipolar and multi-centered. So such a situation facilitates the formation of new clubs, concerts, and coalitions of the like-minded, which makes the reform of older institutions and frameworks much more challenging. So what can G20 and India do when we are talking about the multilateral reforms to fix this malaise within multilateralism? G20 needs to devise multiple solutions. Obviously इस चीज का कोई एक solution नहीं हो सकता है, but जब हम multiple solutions की बात कर रहे हैं तो वो भी क्या solutions हो सकते हैं. So currently multilateralism reform narrative lives only in the elite circles and some national capitals, particularly the emerging powers only. So globally we cannot say कि this thing is very common जब हम बात कर रहे हैं multilateral reforms की. So therefore G20 it should focus on setting proper narratives of multilateral reforms. So setting proper narratives can be one thing when it comes to the role of G20 and India. And G20 may constitute an engagement group dedicated to bring the narrative to the forefront of the global discourse. Then India should also urge the upcoming chairs of the grouping. So Brazil would be the upcoming chair, Brazil and South Africa, so that they can also place multilateral reforms as their presidential priorities. So India can also urge जो आने वाले presidents है G20 के to emphasize upon again multilateral reforms, because it is important that this thing is continued in future. Apart from that, many of the today's problems, they need global solutions and global cooperation. चाहे वो climate change हो, conflicts हो, या फिर साइबर सिक्योरिटी से रिलेटेड चीजें हो, मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक स्टेबिलिटी के लिए हमें कुछ स्टेप्स लेने हो, तो ग्लोबल कोऑपरेशन, ग्लोबल सॉल्यूशंस इन सब चीजों के लिए काम करने वाले हैं. कुछ हैंडफुल ऑफ कंट्रीज इज नॉट गोइंग टू हेल्प. सो हाउएवर वी शुड आल्सो एक्नॉलेज द लिमिटेशंस ऑफ मल्टीलेटरल कोऑपरेशन. सो एट द सेम टाइम हम बात कर रहे हैं कि मल्टीलेटरल फॉर्म्स होने चाहिए, उनको बहुत बेनिफिट होने वाला है, बट एट द सेम टाइम हमें दूसरे साइड भी पता होना चाहिए कि मल्टीलेटरल कोऑपरेशन की वजह से क्या लिमिटेशंस भी हो सकती हैं. सो लेट्स अंडरस्टैंड दैट. सो competing interest and the dominance of powerful states are there to stay in multilateral platforms. So जब भी हम multilateral reforms की बात भी कर रहे हैं, तो even in multilateral platforms भी जो भी हैं, उसमें कुछ dominance of powerful states वो still रहेगा. We cannot say कि वो कम हो जाएगा. So this is वी कैन से एक लिमिटेशन ये होने वाला है कि स्टिल कुछ जो डोमिनेंट पावर्स है वो स्टिल बहुत ज़्यादा पावरफुल रहेंगी कंपेयर टू अदर मेंबर्स. So therefore, while supporting multilateral cooperation, G20 it should continue encouraging minilateral groupings as a new form of multilateralism. So very beautiful statement कि we need to encourage जो minilateral groupings है as a new form of multilateralism. So we can say this is multilateralism 2.0, and we need to try to transform them into multi-stakeholder partnerships. So this is like very important for you to understand कि जब हम बात कर रहे हैं ऑफ मल्टीलेटरलिज्म 2.0, सो इसमें मिनी लेटरल ग्रुपिंग्स दे कैन बी अ न्यू फॉर्म ऑफ मल्टीलेटरलिज्म, एंड we need to try to transform them into multi-stakeholder partnerships. So creating networks of issue-based minilaterals, particularly in areas related to the governance of the global commons, will be helpful in preventing competitive coalitions where other actors play the same game to their own advantage and leading to a more fragmented world order. So multilateral reforms, they also require mobilizing the political will, subsequently giving concessions and conciliations. However, most reform bids have yet to take this issue seriously. And to overcome the trust, legitimacy, and utility crisis of multilateralism, the world requires a model. We need a model, and the G20 can be one of them. However, to fit the purpose, the group needs to be more inclusive without sacrificing efficiency. So, this can be one thing which needs to be taken into account when we move forward. When we're talking about the multilateral reforms, कि group that needs to be much more inclusive, और जो left out countries है they need to be taken into consideration, but साथ ही साथ we cannot sacrifice the efficiency. For example, including the African Union as a permanent member and the UN Secretary General and the General Assembly President as the permanent invitees would be helpful to enhance the legitimacy, because when we include African Union in this process, so it would become much more inclusive, and obviously we cannot leave them out. So similarly, to address the crisis of trust and utility, so to address this issue of trust and utility, G20 should put all its efforts into solving one or two pressing global issues and showcase it as the model of the new multilateralism. So definitely India and G20 दोनों के पास opportunity है to show कि जो भी कुछ global issues है उसमें से at least कुछ हम basically उनका solution या तो propose कर सके, या इस तरीके से we need to put that कि we are able to show कि yes, G20 can be one of the models of new multilateralism. So food, fuel, fertilizer security can be one of the issues जिसमें we can show that thing. And on the one hand, it falls under the low politics of world politics, so cooperation is more achievable. And on the other, it is a global cause of concern also. Basically, हम यहाँ बात करें food, fuel and fertilizer security के बारे में, साथ ही साथ ये global cause of concern भी है अभी current time period में. So it can trigger stagflation and recession across the globe. So अगर India and G20 साथ ही साथ in collaboration with the other members, if we are able to like successfully put this thing out, so it would be amazing. And more significantly, this issue spreads across the overall priorities of India within and beyond the G20. So that's all about multilateral reforms. So is the internet as we know it, is it going to change or not, is the question. So why is Supreme Court interpreting Section 230 of the US Communications Decency Act of 1996? What are the technology companies and digital rights activists saying about it? So the Supreme Court of United States, it has begun hearing two pivotal lawsuits that will for the first time ask it to interpret Section 230 of the US Communications Decency Act of 1996, the law that has shielded technology companies from the liabilities over decades. So the lawsuits, they pose a long-standing question. The question is, should digital companies be held liable for the content that users post on the platforms? So obviously ये इंडिया के लिए भी फिट बैठता है कि जो डिजिटल कंपनीज हैं क्या वो लाइबल है जो भी कंटेंट सोशल मीडिया प्लेटफॉर्म्स पे यूजर्स के द्वारा पोस्ट किया जाता है. सो यूएस वाली सिचुएशन में हम इतना नहीं जाएंगे. दिस क्वेश्चन इज इंपॉर्टेंट इवन फ्रॉम द पर्सपेक्टिव ऑफ इंडिया ऑल्सो. सो लेट्स सी यूएस में क्या डिसीजन रहेगा रिगार्डिंग दिस. सो यहाँ पे देख लेते हैं टेक कंपनीज का क्या कहना है और दिस होल इशू, दिस क्वेश्चन. सो बेसिकली वी सी कि a group of technology companies, websites, academics, users of the internet and rights groups, they filed amicus curiae briefs in the Supreme Court of United States urging it to not change Section 230, outlining the sweeping impact such a move could have on the internet. So उनका कहना यही है कि चेंजेस नहीं लेके आने चाहिए. So in this picture, what you are seeing are known as the salt flats. So why are salt flats around the world covered in a similar pattern of ridges? So you can see ki how beautiful pattern they are making, and this is almost, we can say, a uniform kind of a pattern जो हमें दूर दूर तक देखने को मिल रहा है through this picture. And this picture is there from Bolivia. So this is the world's largest salt flat located in Bolivia. So these captivating patterns have been photographed as far apart as Bolivia, Chile, China, India, Iran, Tunisia, and the US. So salt flats हमें in countries में भी देखने को मिलते हैं. And in a new study, researchers from Austria, Germany, and UK, many have finally found an explanation as to why these patterns form the way they do. So basically, इस article में we will be talking about कि explanation या फिर क्या reason है behind such a pattern that these salt flats they are forming. क्या इसके पीछे reason है, क्या इसका cause है. However, हम ज़्यादा डिटेल में नहीं जाएंगे. सो सबसे पहले ये समझते हैं कि what actually are salt flats. So salt flat, it is a natural landscape in which a large area of flat land is covered by the salt. So एक ऐसा flat land जो natural landscape है, जो दूर दूर तक salt के द्वारा cover किया जाता है, जहाँ पे आपको दूर दूर तक सिर्फ salt मिलेगा, and it is a flat land. और साथ ही साथ it is a natural landscape also. So perhaps the world's most well-known salt flat is the Salar de Uyuni in Bolivia. I hope I'm pronouncing it rightly. So it is the largest in the world of its kind and also contains more than half of the planet's lithium reserves as well. So दो reasons की वजह से it becomes important. Apart from that, a salt flat forms from a natural water body whose recharge rate is lower than the evaporation rate. So this is very important कि क्या situation है या क्या ऐसी condition है जिसके अंडर जिसकी वजह से salt flats बनते हैं. So the thing is कि अगर कोई natural water body है and उसका recharge rate is lower than the evaporation rate, या हम बोल सकते हैं evaporation rate ज़्यादा है than the recharge rate, उस कंडीशन के अंडर वी सी कि सॉल्ट फ्लैट्स बनते हैं. सो ओवर टाइम ऑल द वाटर इवेपोरेट हो जाता है क्योंकि ऑब्वियसली इवेपोरेशन रेट ज्यादा है, लीविंग बिहाइंड द डिसॉल्व्ड मिनरल्स यूजुअली जो सॉल्ट होते हैं. सो दे रिफ्लेक्ट द सनलाइट स्ट्रांगली. सो यहाँ पे एल्बीडो इफेक्ट भी आ जाता है, and thus appear bright. So the underlying soil is highly saline. Even if the water table is shallow, the soil is highly saline and the groundwater is too salty for humans to drink. So groundwater भी obviously बहुत salty मिलेगा. So talking about the study and the findings, कि क्या reason है कि ऐसा pattern they form. So researchers, they began with the hypothesis that the salt on the surface is influenced by the salt flowing through the soil below. So this is the hypothesis जो जिससे researchers ने start किया कि जो salt on the surface है वो influence होता है from the salt जो soil के under flow कर रहा है. So imagine the soil in the salt flat, that there are some ridges on the top followed by a layer of salt, then the topmost layer of the soil, and finally rest of the soil that is there. So that's how you can get this thing divided into different layers and understand. Then the groundwater in the soil is saline, but the distribution of salt that is not uniform, and the salinity is highest near the top of the soil and it decreases towards the bottom. This is one thing. And researchers, they found that the salt penetrated deeper into the soil exactly below the ridges, and it remained shallow under the flat areas. So जो ridge वाला area था वहाँ पे we see that basically salt it penetrated deeper into the soil. जो ये ridges आपको देखने को मिल रहे हैं, small small हम बोल सकते हैं बाउंड्रीज बोल सकते हैं, वहां पे वी सी कि सॉइल द सॉल्ट इट penetrates very deep into the soil, and बाकी area में it remains flat या उसकी concentration कम रहती है. So that is, if you removed the topmost layer and you looked directly down at the soil, you would see that the salty groundwater is flowing deeper into the soil along the vertical sheets, not throughout the flat area. So this is basically what the researchers they have observed, and the surface of the salt flat has a layer of salt that has been deposited over time. Obviously itni jaldi nahi form hote, it takes several of years. So just under the surface, the groundwater is highly saline and denser than the groundwater further below. So if any water reaches and rises above the surface, it evaporates to leave more salt behind. And the researchers found that if the rate of evaporation is sufficiently high, that is, if the rate of salt deposition on the surface is sufficiently high, the denser groundwater will sink down, and the less saline, less dense groundwater will rise to the top. So this body of descending and ascending water is called a convection cell. So that's how it gets, formed, and that's how it works. And it is very important from the perspective of science. So that's all from here. So our defense minister says that keep constant vigil along the borders and entire coastline. Constantly evolving world order, it has forced everyone to re-strategize, says our defense minister. So हमने अभी India and Germany के बारे में भी we looked at how the world order is changing, and multilateral reforms के context में भी हमने देखा कि how it is changing and how it is reshaping. Every country is trying to re-strategize so that they're able to maintain their national security. So India and Australia are in talks to upgrade their trade pact. And recently we also finalized the free trade agreement with Australia. Coming to Rushikulya Sands team with the olive ridley. So obviously olive ridleys या फिर Rushikulya beach is associated with the olive ridley turtles. Picture में आप देख सकते हो, the turtles, they are coming ashore at the Rushikulya in the Ganjam district of the state of Odisha. So beach in Odisha's Ganjam, it witnesses a record mass nesting of around 6.37 lakh turtles this year, and absence of extreme weather events made the conditions favorable for them. And tagging of the turtles still continues, so we are also counting them in numbers through tagging. And there is Gahir Mata Wildlife Sanctuary that is located, so that is also in the state of Odisha, which is important. Apart from that, आप olive ridley turtles के बारे में थोड़ा और find out करोगे in terms of what is their IUCN status, and India में और कहाँ we find the olive ridley turtles. So one example of a tussle between a center and state government is the example of West Bengal. Basically, they are witnessing uncertainty over the release of the MJ Narega funds for the state of Bengal. So there is a tussle going on with the center. So Union Law Minister says that democracy is being attacked in the name of freedom of expression. So obviously this is in the backdrop of Rahul Gandhi's, we can say, his speech at the University of Cambridge. So he says that attempts are being made to attack democracy in the name of freedom of expression. And he delivered this address at 23rd Commonwealth Law Conference in Goa. So he said that one of the success stories of democracy was a strong constitutional provision that called for clear separation of powers among the judiciary, executive, and the legislature. And if any wing tries to encroach upon the territory of another, it must be fiercely resisted. So he also talked about the 1975 emergency. So he said, I can assure this august house that in India, democracy cannot be overthrown because Indians are inherently democratic. And there was one attempt in 1975 when emergency was imposed, but the people of India resisted it fiercely, and rule of law prevailed again, and it will prevail forever. So there is adenovirus infection that is spreading in West Bengal. So many of the infectious people, the victims, they had comorbidities. So amid the reports of the death of children caused by adenovirus infection in West Bengal, the chief minister said so far 19 children they had died of this infection, of which 13 had comorbidities. So we can like find out more about what is adenovirus, how is it caused, and what are the threats because of it. So railways, they tie up with ISRO for train tracking. So that's how basically can collaborate technology and make things much more safe and much more efficient. So they'll be having the real-time train information system when it comes to train tracking. So as we have as we use Google, and we also have Navig, that is India's navigation with Indian constellation. So that is India's own regional navigation satellite system. Coming to the world page, UN takes new measures to fight the climate change. So, UN announced on Monday that it had taken a significant step towards trying to fill a key gap in the fight against the climate change, that is, standardized real time tracking of greenhouse gases. So, this is the new measure, and the UN's World Meteorological Organization has come up with a new global greenhouse gas monitoring infrastructure that aims to provide better ways of measuring planet warming pollution and help inform the policy choices. So WMO's new platform will integrate the space-based and the surface-based observing systems, and it seeks to clarify uncertainties about where the greenhouse gas emissions end up. So we'll be having much more clarity about the greenhouse gases emissions. Will be able to track which all countries are emitting a larger amount of greenhouse gases, and obviously where we need to focus much. So it should result in much faster and sharper data on how the planet's atmosphere is changing. Coming to the business page, we see that the retail vehicle sales, they rose by 16% in Feb, and festivals seen driving the March demand. So sales have picked up as chip shortages eased and automakers introduced new models. So FADA sees changes in the emission norms from April, promotional offers from the automakers. So we are basically, it is majorly driven by the festival demand. So government is going to unveil the retail trade policy. So the government is working to bring a national retail trade policy for the brick and mortar retail traders to promote the ease of doing business for them. And obviously they have been impacted because of the e-commerce platforms. So the department said is also working to bring an e-commerce policy for the online retailers. So we want that there should be synergy between e-commerce as well as the retail traders, that is the brick and mortar shops. And the department is also in the process of formulating an insurance scheme for all the retail traders. So the accident insurance scheme would particularly help the small traders of the country. And apart from that, the senior official urged the industry to focus on producing high quality products. So we see nannies on call, spas, and luxury houses, they are seeing a mad rush. So basically, the real estate sector is performing very nicely. Coming to Mint, we see that why every technology firm wants an artificial intelligence powered chatbot. What is the reason behind that? And obviously, we've been talking about ChatGPT and the growing adoption of artificial intelligence. What are the diverse uses and benefits of artificial intelligence? So let's understand this thing. So how transformative is the generative artificial intelligence? So basically it can help the businesses create content more efficiently and faster by generating headline suggestions, blogs, images, captions, product descriptions, reviews, ads, code generation, and even templates for marketing campaigns and ideas to augment the artistic creativity. So that is one of the benefits. So basically it would be helping in a way to increase the efficiency. And you, like for example, we have the Shopify's magic tool. Apart from that, it can also analyze the data from the clinical trials and other sources, accelerating the new drug development. And in the retail sector, basically we are seeing Carrefour is experimenting with ChatGPT to make videos to answer the customers' questions also. So basically, it is increasing the efficiency of businesses, and that's why most of them want to adopt it in any which way possible, which is the most beneficial for them, which is most profitable for them. So how is the big tech upping these stakes? So Microsoft is not only funding the open artificial intelligence, but also made it artificial intelligence powered Bing available on its Edge browser, Skype, and also as a typable Windows search box in the taskbar. So we're having all these things. So Google is also having its own type of chat GPT that is called Bard. It is powered by its language model for dialogue applications, which is Lambda, but the company is yet to integrate Bard with a Google search yet. Thirdly, what Musk doing in the generative artificial intelligence race? So what is Elon Musk doing here? So he's wary of the Microsoft's investment in open artificial intelligence, and he's accused it of pushing for profits instead of developing artificial intelligence for human good. So he's basically also setting up artificial intelligence powered chatbot, which will be called Based AI. So this is technology. What are the pitfalls of it? Obviously, there are benefits, there are negatives. So talking about some of the pitfalls about it. So the AI-powered chatbots, they continue to hallucinate, meaning they can provide convincing yet untrue or inaccurate statements. So the thing is, we cannot 100% or we cannot completely rely upon them. So they are also prone to plagiarizing the text and the ideas that can violate even the intellectual property. So using chatbots mindlessly can rewire the brain and make us humans outsource our thinking abilities to the machines. So that would be in a way impacting our creativity, our thinking abilities, our cognitive skills. So how to avoid the dark side of the generative artificial intelligence? So recommendations to ban it are basically a retrograde steps, and given there are obviously benefits of using it, which we just talked about. So that said, policymakers have to build the frameworks to regulate the technology companies on the use of the copious amounts of the data that is being fed to these models daily. So we need to basically regulate this thing and not completely ban it, because obviously there are some useful benefits of it. So smart chatbots, they must reveal their sources and give credit to the original authors. So humans ought to moderate the output of such chatbots for inaccuracies, the toxic content, and the racial bias, which is easier said than done since it increases the cost of the companies at the same time. So it can be beneficial in the way that it increases their efficiency, it reduces their time in some of the activities, but again, when it comes to their regulation, their moderated use, that would be increasing the cost for the companies at the same time. Understanding how India spends, travels, and invests. So more Indians, they are now financially stretching themselves with unaffordable purchases while saving for health shocks, and travel is becoming much more popular, which is as per the survey held in December. So chart 1 is talking about more Indians, they are now struggling to spend within their means. So basically 2020 based survey, it is talking in percentage. So we see around 35% people say that yes, they are comfortably spending within their means. Then next is talking about yes, but they're barely spending that much. And next is saying that this is basically, this portion has increased, which is saying that I am spending just as much as I should be given my financial standing. And some of them, the people who were earlier like saying that no, a little bit too much they are spending out of their means, that have increased. And the number of people who were earlier saying that they are spending too much, that is also increased. So this is one thing that we can take away. And spending on unaffordable items has seen marked risk, basically marked rise across the groups. So spending on unaffordable items has risen. Here it is given in terms of population and the age, by gender also, and by the monthly income. So, but we need to know that unaffordable item spending has increased, and people are spending more on travel also. So financial assets, they gain popularity even as the overall investment confidence dips. So change in investment patterns since the last survey. So where the urban Indians invested. So the number of people, the percentage of the people who invested only in the financial assets, that has increased. Only in physical assets, that has reduced. And people who are spending in both the things, that is almost the same. And people who are not only investing, that is, we can say that has increased. So coming to Financial Express. So Sensex is back above 60,000 mark. So we are seeing that right now the stock market is bullish as of now, because we are seeing that the Adani stocks, they are recovering back. So that is one of the major reason why the market is bullish as of now. But anyways, let's move forward. Let's have a look at what is important for us. So what is Raghurajan sir saying about the old and the new pension scheme? So he said that this, basically the old pension scheme, is an enormous obligation, and not necessarily in the short run, but also in the long run. And there may be less costly ways of addressing the concerns that prompt such moves. So that's what he believes. So we have talked about national retail trade and e-commerce policy already in the Hindu newspaper. So we are seeing that milk prices are on a rise, and obviously this impacts consumers heavily, because almost every day we are dependent upon the milk consumption. So milk prices, they are going to stay elevated till Diwali, says Mother Dairy MD. So that is not such as of like not a good news for us. Import duty on palm oil, it may be hiked. So for this, we need to be knowing that India is dependent upon which all countries when it comes to importing the palm oils. So India is the world's biggest importer of the vegetable oils, is considering raising its import duty on the palm oil to help support the local farmers reeling from the crash in the domestic rapeseed prices. So basically ये एक economic step लिया जाता है जिसमें if we are imposing import duty on our imports, so specifically हम palm oil import की बात कर रहे हैं, तो अगर palm oil imports के ऊपर import duty impose की जाएगी तो उनके prices increase हो जाएंगे in India. And obviously ये जो domestic farmers है जो domestically rapeseed produce कर रहे हैं, उसके थ्रू जो ऑयल होगा वो थोड़ा और कॉम्पिटिटिव हो जाएगा, एंड उन फार्मर्स का इंटरेस्ट सेव करने के लिए दिस इज वन ऑफ द मेजर जो मोस्ट ऑफन लिया जाता है. So the increase in the tax on the palm oil, it could lift the local prices, making the tropical oil a little less competitive than the rival soya oil and the sunflower oil. So basically rapeseed supplies के जो prices है, we are seeing that they are below their MSP. So our prime minister is basically saying that take measures to deal with the threat to the crops and also to the health. So with most parts of the country likely to witness above normal temperatures, we have been obviously talking about this thing in March and May. Prime Minister says that he asked the officials to take immediate measures to mitigate the risk to crops, fodder and health of the people. सो इसकी वजह से आगे आने वाले टाइम में अगर टेम्परेचर्स इंक्रीज होते हैं फॉर दिस गिवन पीरियड, तो this would be impacting the inflation also. आने वाले टाइम में we can expect inflation high रहने वाली है. And at the same time हम ये भी बात कर रहे हैं कि it might be possible कि इस साल हम एल नीनो लाइक कंडीशंस देख सकते हैं. सो ऑब्वियसली उसकी वजह से मॉनसून के ऊपर भी नेगेटिव इम्पैक्ट होगा. अगेन एग्रीकल्चरल प्रोडक्शन वुड डिक्लाइन एंड दैट वुड अगेन लीड टू इंक्रीज इन द प्राइसेस. So he also instructed that availability of fodder and of water in the reservoirs should be tracked. And कुछ दिन पहले हमने ये भी देखा था कि केरला में basically they are facing such a situation कि only कुछ time period के लिए उनके पास sufficient amount of water is available in the reservoirs in different dams. So that is a concern for us for the short-term perspective. So IMF का कहना ये है कि Pakistan must give assurances of financing their balance of payment deficit. So IMF executive says that all IMF program reviews require firm and credible assurances that there is sufficient financing to ensure that borrowing members' balance of payments is fully financed and over the remainder of the program. And Pakistan is no exception to that. Obviously, each and every country needs to assure over this thing if they are trying to borrow from IMF. So healthcare for people, Prime Minister says that we want to give timely healthcare to the citizens through the facility of digital health ID, and 10 crore people have already benefited by teleconsultation through schemes like e-Sanjeevani. So this can be asked in prelims that e-Sanjeevani is related to what? So it is a teleconsultation facility that has been provided by the government. So climate injustice, we've been talking about this thing a lot, that developed nations, they must listen to India and other developing countries and act in the interest of the planet and not just their own interest. So environment minister's recent statement of the global north's developed nations tendency of profiteering from the disaster that is climate change is not an exaggeration, and this point is obviously highlighted a lot of number of times. And the minister has done well to remind the rich nations that the climate crisis is starkly different from other global crises, obviously, and therefore traditional responses need to be shunned. So whether it is the continued refusal to shoulder the responsibility for the historical emissions, so obviously हम ये बोलते हैं कि historical emissions के लिए the developed world is responsible and developed countries को now in the current situation they need to ensure कि वो at least financial aid या जो climate aid की हम बात करते हैं that needs to be made available to the developing world. और हम protectionist measures की बात करें in the name of climate change or the reluctance to provided adequate funds for the adaptation and mitigation measures in the developing world, the West continues to dodge the question of what makes for the meaningful climate action on its part. So these are the reasons. Obviously, developed world is responsible for the historical emissions. You cannot completely, keep a distance away from that, or obviously you have a responsibility now. So instances of the rich nations traditional response abound, and a recent example is the Europe's carbon border adjustment mechanism, which is just protectionism with a greenish tinge. And United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, when it was established in 1992, it urged the developed countries to take all practicable steps to promote, facilitate, and finance the transfer of or access to the climate technologies to other parties, particularly to the developing countries. And it is not just the knowledge transfer that developed the world's reluctance to fund the meaningful climate action is well known. And against an initial commitment of $100 billion annually in the climate finance for the developing nations by 2020, a total of just $83 billion was claimed to have been mobilized. Apart from that, the Green Climate Fund, it has received commitments of just $10 billion so far. even the $100 billion per year target is grossly inadequate. So even this is inadequate. And while India and other developing nations, they point at how rich nations exhausted a large chunk of the carbon budget for keeping the planet to a 1.5 degrees Celsius warming pathway, developed nations continue to shrug off their historical responsibility. So this has been a trend and there is no change in this. Indeed, many experts, they have pointed out that their announcements of the net zero target are hardly ambitious, and deadlines that allowed for the developing world to catch up with them would have been much more meaningful. So the developed nations, they must listen to our mister and act in the interest of planet and not just their own interest, because the impacts would be global in nature. Finally, coming to the Indian Express. So India's civil aviation sector, we see that Indian carriers, they soar and market share is higher than the pre-COVID level. So the key factors in play is that behind the surge in the market share by the Indian airlines, the higher capacities deployed on the international routes by the domestic carriers is one reason. Then there is slower capacity deployment by some foreign carriers. Then there is reduction in the flights by some US carriers to avoid the Russian airspace, and COVID curbs in China and Hong Kong. So these are some of the reasons because of which we are seeing an increase in the civil aviation sector. And apart from that, obviously the huge amount of orders that the airlines have placed for different aircrafts. I think we should directly move on to the editorial page because almost we have discussed all the important articles from the Hindu. So Pradhan Mantri Bharatiya Jan Aushadhi Pariyojana, we need to be knowing about this also. So Jan Aushadhi medicines, they are available at 50% to 90% cheaper prices than the medicines available in the market at different Jan Aushadhi Kendras. So it becomes the strength of the public. So far, we have saved rupees 20,000 crores of the general public through Jan Aushadhis. There are like high quality medicines and surgical equipments are also made available through these kendras. There is financial assistance of rupees 5 lakh for opening of Jan Aushadhi Kendra, and more than 9,000 of them are functioning across the country. WHO GMP certified suppliers, and there are NABL tested quality medicines which are made available for the public, and additional financial assistance of rupees 2 lakh to women, Divyangjan, ex-servicemen, and applicants from the scheduled caste and tribe, island group, and hilly areas is also being made available. So Jan Aushadhi, good and affordable, good quality, and they're affordable at the same time. So to ensure the availability of high quality medicines at low prices, thousands of Jan Aushadhi Kendras have been opened across the country where medicines are being sold at 50% to 90% cheaper rates compared to the market rates. And these have greatly benefited not only the poor, but also the middle class as well. So we need self-reliance in medical and the health sector. And then we also talk about India being the manufacturer or the world's largest hub of the generic medicines when we're talking about the medical sector also. So that is also very important. So future conflicts, they are unpredictable and our forces must be ready all the time. So India is going to launch a global alliance for the big cats and will be investing $100 million in that. So the group will work towards the protection of the 7 big cats, which includes tiger, lion, leopard, snow leopard, puma, jaguar, and cheetah. So from all these, you need to be like knowing that are all of these available in India? Do we find all of them in India or not? And India has proposed to launch a mega global alliance under its leadership to protect the big cats and assured support over 5 years with the guaranteed funding of $100 million, which is rupees 800 crores. And the proposed international big cat alliance, it will work towards the protection and conservation of these 7 big cats that I've just named. And membership to the alliance will be open to the 97 range countries which contain these natural habitats of these big cats, as well as or the other interested nations, the international organizations can also become a member of this alliance. So since we got the cheetahs, we are the only country in the world to have tiger, lions, leopards, snow leopards, and cheetahs in the wild. So we have all of these species in India. We have all the big cats except the pumas and the jaguars today. So we do not have these two. So this is the exception. Need to remember that. So this is a question that I was just asking you. So you got the answer for that. So it is only benefiting that India takes the lead to bring together all the big cat range countries under a UN-like umbrella. So the IE and ICIJ investigation shines a light on the deficiencies in mapping the forest, raises crucial transparency related issues. So, for the better part of the past 4 decades, the Forest Survey of India's State of the Forest reports they have shown a steady increase in the country's forest. So, this is one trend, and the report of the latest survey released last year, for instance, it showed that the country added more than 1,500 square kilometer of the forest between 2019 and 21. But experts they have maintained that these reports are not satisfactory indicators of the ecological health. So the area under plantations has gone up while the country has consistently lost good forest in the past 3 decades. Now, an investigation by the newspaper in association with the International Consortium of the Investigative Journalists has revealed that bungalows of ministers and senior officers, the Reserve Bank of India building, and parts of the campuses of AIMS and IIT in Delhi are classified as forests in the official maps. Okay, so it shines a light on the ambiguities and the gray areas that could prevent the country's afforestation program from achieving its potential. And forest restoration is critical to India's climate goals, obviously. We cannot skip on this thing. And the country is committed to creating an additional sink of 2.5 billion to 3 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent by increasing the forest cover. So this would obviously require it to increase its forest cover by about 25 million hectares in the next 7 years itself. And plantations, they grow fast, and on paper, they can help attain the carbon targets more quickly, because we just saw that how these buildings they are classified as forest on papers. So on paper we can definitely achieve these targets, but trees in such green patches they're also cut down more frequently. And moreover, plantations are mostly monocultures that are no substitute for the biodiverse ecosystems that we find in forest. So they're susceptible to fires, pests, and epidemics, and they often act as a barrier to the natural forest regeneration. And in the last 10 years, more than 1,600 square kilometer of the forest land has been cleared for infrastructure or the industrial projects. Nearly a third of this has been diverted in the past 3 years. And yesterday also we were talking about this compensatory afforestation program. The main challenge is the quality of land. And investigation shows that large sums of money deposited in the afforestation fund, they are lying unused. So even the funds are not being meaningfully and effectively being used for the purpose for which they have been assigned. And funds are, however, they are just one part of the problem of this program. And the program's plantation centered approach means that compensatory afforestation takes place in discontinuous patches. The new green tracts, they are a far cry from the dense forest they are meant to replace. And the government's reluctance to reveal the granular data of the country's forest cover means that such anomalies rarely they come to light. And the key takeaway of the investigation is that the government needs to be more transparent in the way it maps the country's forest. So, talking about India's export performance, so it was a result of the policy interventions. So, India's robust export performance has made a critical contribution to its economic growth in some of the recent times. Despite the global economic woes, the global economic slowdown in the global demand, India's overall exports, merchant, and the services combined, they grew at 17.33% to $641 billion during April to January 2022-23. And this comes after India witnessed an unprecedented growth of 45% with exports touching $422 billion in 2021-22, baffling most pessimistic trade theorists. So during this period, India has demonstrated its capability to navigate successfully through the storm of the post-pandemic supply chain woes, as well as the geopolitical factors, and its resilience has stunned the world. So the country's exports performance was not an accident, but it was the result of well-crafted trade policy interventions, their efficacious implementation, and a host of other initiatives to create a conducive ecosystem to promote exports. So export facilitation ensured the effective conceptualization and implementation of a bundle of export promotion schemes. And the example includes the Market Access Initiative. We have the remission of duties and tax on exported products, trade infrastructure for the export scheme, and in the interest equalization schemes on pre and post shipment rupee export credit, among the most important ones. Then the production linked incentive scheme has been a game changer in terms of the export performance. It has not only transformed India into a manufacturing hub, but has also curtailed its burgeoning trade deficit in electronics and other manufactured goods. And that's how it is. We have basically leveraged, or different manufacturers, they have leveraged this PLI scheme. Talking about the logistics, so it is a critical stumbling block in India's exports competitiveness, and definitely we are working upon reducing our logistical cost also. So that is, we can say, in future, if we are successfully able to reduce the logistics cost, so definitely we would be having exponential impact on again our exports. And fears of a slowdown and an imminent recession threaten the world economy. So India's exports, they are expected to be adversely impacted by the global economic slump. So this is one of the concerns related to our future export performance. So earlier, the trade policy announcement, they were largely confined to the short-term measures. They focused on a few incentives with little strategic intent. So they were, we can say, not having the long-term perspective into account. So that is, we can say, one of the drawbacks. And rationalization of the work allocation within the Ministry of Commerce and restructuring of its divisions and subordinate offices with futuristic objectives is likely to transform India's institutional mechanisms to promote exports. So when we are talking about how can we increase our exports in future, so one of the thing is talking about reforms in India's institutional mechanisms. So, adopting the latest technology in collection, assimilation, processing of data, making available the real time information across stakeholders has bridged the information gap between the exporters and the various government departments. So, technology has also played a very important role. And then again, the Union Ministry, that is Ministry of Commerce, has been actively engaging with the state governments and at the district level for speedy and effective implementation of policy measures to promote exports. So here, cooperation amongst different states and between states and the union is also one of the important factors. Apart from that, most of the free trade agreements signed by India previously, they become counterproductive. So we have not gained much through these free trade agreements signed in past. But Ministry of Commerce has re-examined all the FTAs and it is in process of engaging in the newer ones which will be benefiting India. So recently, India has negotiated the new FTAs meticulously with unprecedented speed and acumen with UAE, Mauritius, Australia, and it is in advanced stages of negotiations even with UK and European Union also. So it is also actively exploring the new trade agreements with European Union and the US, and the trade policy is increasingly charting out the path to achieve $1 trillion in exports by 2030. So yesterday we have already discussed about what is Hindu rate of growth and is India really headed towards that or not. So let's just have a look at this thing. We'll not be going into much detail because yesterday we have talked about this. What is the Hindu rate of growth? We've already taken up yesterday. Was the Hindu rate Nehru's fault? Not important for us. Why did India outgrow the Hindu rate? When did India outgrow the Hindu rate? So the structural reforms which begin by the PV Narasimha Rao and Manmohan Singh is seen as a milestone. That was in 1991. All of us know about the reforms of 1991. That was one of the main reasons why we were able to outgrow from the Hindu rate of growth. And is India reverting back to that Hindu rate of growth or not is the main question now. So India will grow at close to 7% this year, but in the coming year, the growth rate is likely to slip considerably. These are right now the estimations and on the basis of the researchers. So in 9 of the 14 quarters since 2019-20, India's GDP growth rate was less than 4.5%. So here we're talking about the quarterly growth, which was most of the times it was less than 4.5%. Some of the values that were higher than 4.5%, they came primarily because of the low base effect. So here I have explained what do we mean by a low base effect a number of times in my videos. So that is the thing, and if you don't have clarity, you can Google and find out about it. Then but even without that low base, the growth rates of quarter 3 and 4, they have tended to fall within the range of the Hindu rate of growth. So in June 2022, chairman of the Center for Development Studies had told that going forward, the debate essentially would be whether India will fall in the 5% to 6% range or in the 7 to 8% range or not. So yesterday, Raghurajam sir, the former RBI governor, even said that are we really heading towards a Hindu rate of growth or not is the main question from the economic growth perspective. So India's migrant numbers, we've been talking about India's migrant laborers from past 3 to 4 days. So there is concern in Tamil Nadu over a possible exodus of the migrant workers after videos showed purported attacks on Hindi-speaking men. So here's what is known about India's interstate migration numbers. So here this kind of a table is showing that districts which are the top routes. So from Chittoor to Krishna, we have Mumbai to Ratnagiri, Kutch to Chennai. So people are basically, these are one of the most famous trade routes that we can talk about in terms of the migrant population. They are migrating to which all places in India. So patterns of male out migration. So basically the male population is the one who are moving out in large number from their home states. So this table is showing the share of the migrant workers among the total workers by major sections. So in the primary sector, basically, this is the share in manufacturing, public services. So highest one is there in traditional services, also in modern services. This is there. So it is showing the share of the migrant workers among total workers by major sectors. So in rural, in modern services, in female, it is 66%. So female one, it is higher when we're talking about in the rural areas and in different sectors. But when we look at male and female, so it is higher in rural, and in urban, we are seeing that the male is higher than the rural one. So that's how it is. So data on migration, the government data on migration within the country, it is not comprehensive. And in many cases, it is old as well. So we need to relook and we need to update this data. That is the foremost thing. And India basically, as per 2011 census, it reported that the number of internal migrants in India is at around 45 crore. That is, it makes up 37% of the country's population. And this number included both the interstate migrants and the migrants within the states as well. So in all, we can say 37% of the country's population is migrant labor force. And talking about the number, so it was at 42.8 crores India's workforce. So this figure is estimated to have exceeded 50 crores in 2016 as per the economic survey. So we have the district-wise migration data in economic survey for 2016-17. It showed that the highest influx of migrants within the country was in city or districts such as Gurugram, Delhi, and Bombay and Mumbai. So these are the hotspots when we talk about the influx of the migrant population. And along with Gautam Budh Nagar, which is in UP, Indore, Bhopal, Bengaluru, and Tiruvallur, Chennai, Kanchipuram, Erode, and Coimbatore. And highest outward movement of the migrant workers was from Muzaffarnagar, Bijnor, Muradabad, Rampur, Kaushambi, Faizabad, and 33 other districts of Uttar Pradesh, Uttarkashi, Chamoli, Rudraprayag, Tehri, Garhwal, Pauri Garhwal, Pithoragarh, Bageshwar, Almora. So these are basically, they are moving out from the North Indian states. So basically this is talking more about data only. So we've had a broader look. So that's all for today. Thank you for joining UPSC. Thank you for joining Ansarkari, and I hope you've enjoyed the session. You've understood all the topics in detail and nicely. And you'll be also getting the PDF link in the description box. So do not forget to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share this video as much as possible. Thank you so much for joining us for today.